Hi friends, Tony here from Historic American Homes, back with the next episode in creating a small home inspired by mid-century modern design using SketchUp Pro and Layout. Today we're going to talk about fireplace options because a house is not a home unless it's got a warm glowing hearth where the cat can take a nap. We'll start here with Alice from Through the Looking Glass as she passes through the mirror on her overmantel, trying to find her cat that escaped across to the other side. A fireplace, central to the start of the story. Let's take a look at another one. Here's the fireplace at Monticello in the dining room. Monticello.org. I highly recommend the website. It's a fantastic website. You can just wander through the whole house. Jefferson used Count Rumford fireplace design in a number of these fireplaces, and I'll touch on that further down in the video. Here's the fireplace that Frank Lloyd Wright used at the Darwin D. Martin house, which has been beautifully restored in the last few years, including that magnificent wisteria tile overmantel. The fireplace, by the way, it's not readily apparent in this picture, is open to the front and the back. We're seeing the front from the living room side, and the back side opens onto the entry hall, so it's open all the way through. Here's another fireplace by Frank Lloyd Wright from his Jacobs house. It was 1933 or 1935? I think 1933. It was the first of his Usonian houses intended to be designed on a modest middle-class budget. And like all of those houses, it's got a fireplace at its core. So let's see, I've got to bring up my notes here and we will talk through the main points. I want to say this is going to be the first in two videos on fireplaces. In the first one, we're just going to look at all the various choices and options that are available because there are so many. And then in the next video, I will have picked the approach I'm going to use and will be implementing it in the design of our mid-century modern home. So let's start at the top here, fireplaces. International Residential Code 2018, Chapter 10 is the section of the building code that covers fireplaces. Every jurisdiction has its own rules, but the vast majority of them have adopted the International Residential Code with maybe their own modifications. But this is as good a place to start as any if you want to incorporate a fireplace into your home. So Chapter 10. Masonry fireplaces. We won't go into detail on the code here, and you don't need to go into detail on it, but I thought you should know where it is so that you can come back to it when you are working with other people who do need the detail. Masonry fireplaces, that's the main part of the first part of the chapter. This gives lots of information about clearances and so forth around masonry. This is a basic brick masonry fireplace design that table is based on. Standard traditional fireplace design. Let's see, chimneys. You've got a section on chimneys. It's all there in the next section. There's further down we have clearances. This is something you'll want to think about as you're working out your initial ideas. You don't need to know every detail about how to build a chimney, but you do probably want to have a good idea how to plan the finish aspects of the fireplace in your room. So that means bringing combustible materials like trim, wooden mantle near to the fireplace opening. That's something there that you will want to be aware of, the requirements for that. And that's here, R1001.11, fireplace clearance. Following that, you've got masonry heaters, which are essentially brick fireplaces, but totally enclosed. Masonry chimneys, and then beyond masonry, we go to gas fireplace options. More on chimneys. Let's get further down here. More on chimneys. Factory-built chimneys. Exterior air supply, I'll just say briefly that every form of combustion in your home should really have an exterior air supply. So even if you're building a traditional wood fireplace with brick, you're going to want to have some way to bring exterior air into the firebox so that you're not using the air that's actually in the room itself. So that's what this is about. Okay, enough about the building code. We will move on to the next item on our agenda here. Fireplace types. We'll start with wood stoves. I don't, this is not sponsored. I am not receiving anything from any of the companies that I'm mentioning here, but these just happen to be the resources I have found myself most often turning to when I'm working on my own projects. Uh, in large part because they're good quality products and because they're nicely designed websites where you can find answers to your questions. So Woodstoves, woodstove.com, and vermontcastings.com. Uh, a lot of good information about Woodstoves. These guys at Woodstock Soapstone, they incorporate soapstone panels into their cast iron, which is really quite gorgeous when you see them in person. They're really beautifully crafted. They've got good. I encourage you to browse through the whole website. They've got a lot of good like manuals. This is a section that's got a lot of good detail on things like you need to plan, for example, to have certain amount of clearance space behind and to either side of your wood stove. You can't just put it smack up against the wall. You need to provide enough space around it on the three sides away from the front. 18 to 24 inches, depending on the material that is on the wall behind it, for example. It can take up some more space than you may have initially expected. So that's crucial to your initial planning when you're laying out your spaces. Here's Vermont Castings, similar. They do also really beautiful cast iron. They incorporate cooking into some of their stoves as well, by the way, which is kind of nice. And again, they've got a lot of really good resources on planning and choosing the right type of wood stove. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on wood stoves here because there are so many other approaches as well. Masonry heaters, these would be your fireplace, but fully enclosed, built of brick or ceramic on site. Ceramic stoves, these are a category of masonry heaters that are very popular, originated in and are very popular in Northern Europe. You see them a lot in Scandinavia and in Germany. Very traditional. You find them in beautiful palaces. I think they've got them in the palaces in St. Petersburg. But they also have more modest home-scaled versions, and they're beautifully built in ceramic, so brick glazed with ceramic. Super good, efficient way to heat a home, especially if it's centrally planned and you can have just one. They are on the pricey side, but they will last forever. Here's a Russian, what they call a Russian stove. I'm sure it's been used in other countries as well, and it's the same principle, except that it's built on site rather than in being built in a shop out of ceramic. It's built on site using brick, and basically what you have is a series of channels. So you create your fire in the firebox, and you've got a whole series of channels, which is your flue, kind of wrapping its way up until it finally vents out the top. And so this entire mass of masonry is warmed by the smoke as it's ascending the flue. And so once the fire is out, you've got this big, warm, radiating mass of masonry to keep you warm and cozy all night long through those cold Russian winters. So masonry heaters, that's that item. By the way, I will put links for all this stuff in the description below, so please do look in the description. I'm also working on several blog posts. I've got a couple of them up already that are focused more on like the design of the mantles and how to make them look pretty or match the style of your home. I've got several blog posts on that, and I'll be adding to that shortly. So I'll make a link to one of my blog posts. Encourage you to go there to read more on that. So we were just looking at masonry heaters. Now let's move on to masonry wood-burning fireplace. Traditional design is the design that is in the International Residential Code 2018 that we looked at the beginning of the video. I'll just click back on that for a moment here if I can find the tab. There it is. That's the one that has a big table at the top of the code. Getting there. There it is. So this basically describes the traditional masonry fireplace, which has a fairly wide opening with a kind of boxy firebox. Now I wanted to touch on another possibility here, which I would never even do the traditional design. The Rumford design, created by a fellow named Count Rumford in the 1700s, is a much more effective a way to heat a room with a masonry fireplace, and it's been universally adopted. It's all available. It's also included in the code. There's a spot in here somewhere that gives an exception against all of this if you're using a Rumford design. So we'll take a quick look at Rumford here. Two websites that are really helpful: rumford.com, which has a lot of technical information that if you think you want to go down this route, you'll want to read through the entire website. And then there's another that I think this might be the same company, or it might be an affiliated company, but it's called Superior Clay Corporation, and they make all kinds of prefabricated elements, like the throat piece at the top of the fireplace here. They make these pieces so an accomplished do-it-yourselfer could build one of these for their own house, especially with the guidance that a company like Superior Clay can give you. You will also find on the Superior Clay website the basic dimensions for the various sizes of fireplace. So that's critical when you're laying out your space again. So Rumford.com and Superior Clay Corporation, highly recommended if you might be going down the masonry fireplace approach. Rumford, Superior Clay, EarthCore. That's another one that's worth looking into. I have not yet had the opportunity to work with one of these myself directly, but they just look like really beautiful products. It's EarthCore is the name of the company, and they make both gas and wood fireplaces, but I particularly like their wood fireplaces. What they do is they have the entire fireplace as a kind of a kit of parts, which means you're not laying up individual bricks, because you just buy the entire assembly. It arrives on a pallet in pieces, and you build it up like that. I think it looks like a really interesting, intriguing approach to doing a wood fireplace. Things to be aware of when you're trying to decide which route to go down. With a masonry fireplace, traditional style, Rumford style, you're going to need to have a masonry chimney. That's going to go all the way up. It's going to need to go above your rooftop. The code, if I recall correctly, is that it needs to be 2 feet above the highest roof point within 10 feet of the chimney, something like that. Anyway, it's got to be up there quite a ways, and that means that chimney is subjected to high seismic and high wind loading. So if you're in an area where strong winds or earthquakes are an issue, there's going to be some engineering involved and some complications that come from that, because it's a lot of weight. And if it's a wood framed house supporting a lot of weight from a brick chimney, there's some hoops you're going to have to jump through to make that happen. People do it all the time. I think it looks great, so don't let that stop you from researching the possibility. Just be aware that it's an issue. An alternative to that is a prefabricated wood burning fireplace, which is something like, there are two companies that I often use their websites, Regency and Heatolator, and they make both gas and wood fireplaces. And what these are like wood stoves made of metal rather than masonry, made of cast iron, but they're shaped in the shape of a fireplace and can be installed so that the finished result looks more like a fireplace than a wood stove. So that's a great route to go down. Then you only need to have a metal chimney. You don't need to have a masonry chimney, and you can sidestep all those issues of earthquake and wind loading on the chimney. They do have their own clearance requirements, and they can take up a considerable amount of space for that. And let's see, I'll go over to show you in this little SketchUp file of mine here. I have on the right side here, I have modeled, and I've used this in a few designs, one of these prefabricated wood fireplaces. So this is a 36-inch wide opening, and in order to meet the requirements for clearances, I had to create space for it that was 6 feet wide, even though the opening of the fireplace itself is only 3 feet wide, and it's about a little over 2 feet deep. So that's a certain amount of space that you need to account for when you're doing your initial planning. Whereas The same manufacturer that makes that wood burning fireplace, they make a gas fireplace, which is 42 inches wide and only requires 5 feet, less than 5 feet, excuse me, 4 foot 3 inches of clearance in order to fit a 42-inch wide gas fireplace. So, you know, that's a consideration that may come into play when you're planning your own project. So that was Heatolator and Regency, two good websites to look at. They both have gas and wood burning fireplaces. Let me go back to them briefly and just mention a few points. They both have good resources as far as how much space. Try that again. How much space these are going to require. They have detailed drawings of all their fireplaces available on their websites. For instance, this fireplace here, Altera, under specifications, you've got all the dimensions here. You've got downloads of the brochure, the architectural manual worth looking at. Oh, let's see, there was some other things I wanted to show you here. Let's take a look at the traditional gas fireplaces. Another option that's available using gas rather than wood is three-sided fireplaces. You can get wood fireplaces that are open front and back, but with gas, I don't see it here right in front of my nose, but with gas you can get 2 and 3-sided, opposite sides, two adjacent sides, or 3 sides. So that's also a nice feature that's only available if you go down the gas fireplace route. All right, getting close to the end here. I don't want to take too much more time with this. It's too much information. But I wanted to touch on just a couple more points as you're making your decisions about which approach to take. You may live in a jurisdiction that has a complete ban on wood burning. There are quite a few around the country, so you may simply not have the option, unfortunately, of going with the wood fire. If that's something you will certainly need to look into early in your design process. If that's the case, then you should have no problem going with gas. Both wood fireplaces and gas fireplaces can be quite energy efficient overall. I would not use them as the primary heat source in most situations. However, they really can provide affordable heat in a house. They can be just decorative, but they can really warm your house nicely. So it may be that you can reduce the size of your main heating plant for your house, and then on those 2 or 3 coldest weeks of winter, supplement it with your fireplace. That way you're not buying a lot of expensive furnaces that you're only really needing to max out during the depth of winter. So keep that in mind. In the mid-century modern house I'm working on, I'm taking the approach of the floor slab being a heated slab. So all the heat will be provided through the heated floor slab. However, again, the fireplace will be there partly just for ambience and beauty, but also for those few evenings a year where you just need that extra little boost. So some jurisdictions ban wood burning. Do check. Another thing to consider is venting options. If you're doing a wood burning fireplace, it's going to be a chimney up through your roof. No other option. Not much other choice about it. Some of the wood burning, I should qualify that. Some of the prefabricated wood fireplaces that are not masonry, you can vent out the sides and the back. The gas fireplaces, you have all those options as well, side, back, up. However, do keep in mind if you're going out the side, they vent at where it's going through the wall. There's a kind of a cover on the outside, and that can get very hot because there's still quite a bit of heat in the flue gases that are going out. And so you want to place that in a location where it's not going to be easy for people to bump into, for children to be tempted to reach up and touch. Just a little thing to keep in mind. You mustn't forget that there's something on the other side of the wall there when you're putting your fireplace in. And that goes to say that if you're putting it in the middle of your house somewhere where it's far from an outside wall, and if it's on the ground floor of a 2-story house with an attic, you may get into issues with how long your chimney is. So that's another point to keep in mind. Too many bends, you can't have too many bends. There are limitations as to how far you can go with the flue. I guess that pretty much wraps it up. We'll get into the house model in the next episode. What I've got here is the great room here in the middle, and dining at one corner, and then sitting area over here. And this stretch of wall, if you can see my mouse moving here, this stretch of wall is where I'm going to create a fireplace and some kind of built-in shelving design. And I'm most likely going to end up using a two-sided fireplace, because here's the front door. You step in the front door and you're a little entry area here, and I thought it would be a nice focal point to be able to see a two-sided fireplace here as a kind of way to invite you into the space. So that's where we're going to be. That's what we're going to be working on in the next video. I do hope you come back and watch that. I hope you liked this one. If you did, please click the like button and subscribe. And even more important, leave me a comment. I really would like to get people to leave some comments and let me know what they think of the videos, what kind of information they want me to cover in more detail. So that's it. Tony checking out from Historic American Homes. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.